Equity analyst James Hay for the pharmaceutical and biotechnology sector at Brewin Dolphin. Welcome.
Thank you. Good
Don't know if you were trying to sabotage me.
No, I don't think it's me. No.
Also, our guest host today is Daniel Lacaille, a senior portfolio manager at Ecofin. Were you sabotaging me?
No, I wasn't. No,
okay.
I wasn't.
Well, right. Excellent. Welcome, gentlemen. What do we make of these pharma deals that are in the making? I mean, they're huge deals. It would really change the landscape if they happened.
They are. They're very large deals. Some slightly more surprising than others. I think the Pfizer-AstraZeneca approach was somewhat out of the blue. I think most had expected AstraZeneca to be an acquirer as opposed to being acquired. But Novartis and Glaxo, they've been looking at sort of rationalising their portfolios for a while now. That's been waiting in the wings. And I think what they've done today is it looks very sensible.
And do you think it will go ahead, the Pfizer-AstraZeneca deal? Because we have reports now that the initial bid, that's been they've said no thank you to it. It's too low. Yeah,
it's a sort of, people are divided on this one. There are some very good strategic rationales for doing a deal like this on Pfizer's perspective. It has a very large cash balance, the majority of which is tied up overseas, and Pfizer would like to use that cash maybe by buying a foreign pharmaceutical company without having to pay sort of 35% repatriation tax on the cash it's got. Obviously, there are usually synergies in pharmaceutical companies. Both have a very large cardiovascular portfolio, looking at heart disease and lowering cholesterol, so there could be some serious synergies there. And there's also some potential tax benefits. Pfizer's current tax rate is around about 28% and Astra at 22%. And so if they could invert the tax domicile, Pfizer could benefit quite meaningfully from a lower tax rate.
I was reading some research earlier, and there was a quote from an analyst saying something along the lines of, any company that's not one of the really, really big companies right now is potentially a takeover target in the pharma sector. Do you think that's the case?
I think it depends on what the sort of the core focus of that potential acquiring company is. You know, as was said earlier in the programme, a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies are now focusing on rationalising their portfolios, really focusing on the areas where they're very strong, and fewer of them are sort of just buying in sales now that the sort of worst of the patent cliff has started to expire.
Yeah.
How easy is it for you to achieve these synergies that we're reading in some of the reports this morning? Because historically it's been quite a challenge and not that good. Companies have not been that good at achieving those synergies, and especially cash synergies, not like for like and dressing up. So how do you see this going forward? Do you think that this is achievable?
I think there is a relatively high degree of overlap between the underlying businesses and portfolios that Pfizer and AstraZeneca do have. As I mentioned, the cardiovascular portfolio, Pfizer once sold what still sells Lipitor, which was once the world's largest drug. That's now gone off patent. AstraZeneca has a slightly more potent statin called Crestor. Again, Pfizer has Eliquis, which is a blood thinner, and AstraZeneca has Brilinta, which is one of its recently launched blood thinners. So, I mean, generally in pharmaceuticals, you see between 10 and 15% synergies across the SG&A line. And so, yeah, I think that this time there could be some meaningful accretion from synergies.
Cool. Just speaking of the oncology bit, I mean, Glaxo essentially would be getting out of the oncology business. Is that the desired effect? Are they trying to refocus the entire business?
For Glaxo's client?
Yeah.
I think, well, I mean...
Sorry, I said Pfizer. Glaxo.
Yeah. Glaxo, it has a relatively small oncology business. I mean, the sales that they've divested to Novartis today are about 1.6 billion, which is 6 products, and that's the equivalent sales of one of Novartis' products, Afinitor. So I think with Novartis having a much deeper portfolio of oncology products and more experience in that area, they will be able to perhaps crystallise a little bit more value than GlaxoSmithKline has done in the oncology field.
And I guess you've also got the issue of handing money back to shareholders. Glaxo returning, what, £4 billion to shareholders after these changes?
Yes, yeah, well, Glaxo's always been a relatively shareholder-friendly company anyway. We'd assumed 1.2 billion buyback anyway this year, so this extra buyback, this extra 3.8 is somewhat accretive, but it wasn't hugely unexpected that there would be a capital return. Yeah. And Novartis as well, that's becoming more shareholder-friendly now, and they've got a 2-year buyback of about $5 billion.
Would you venture into healthcare at the moment? I mean, do you think it's a sector that has potential growth possibilities?
Especially in the businesses that are focused on private consumption and you know, where physician client relationship is very, very important, and where it's very linked to the consumer side of the business. So I think that's a very, very interesting side where the wealth effect.
Which actually is slightly not where Pfizer or Astra are. They're more in the sort of primary care market, the much larger respiratory disorders, you know, breathing problems or statins, cholesterol lowering. So
Interesting. James, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us here at the top of the hour. James Hay, equity analyst for the pharmaceutical and biotechnology sector at Brewin Dolphin. Now, the U.S. firm behind the Botox wrinkle treatment gets a lift after a Canadian drug maker offered to buy it for $47 billion. Valeant Pharmaceuticals says it has partnered with activist investor Bill Ackman to take control of the California-based Allergen in order to boost its skin and eye care portfolio. If successful, the merger would create one of the 5 largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. I'm a bit afraid of Botox.
It's a little bit scary. I agree with that.
I'm just afraid of what happens, once you start. How do you stop again? And I know a lot of people do it, but